Have you ever wondered what makes Lewis Hamilton really special inside the track? What concrete ability does it even have Charles Leclerc, one of the best pilots of today, acknowledges not being able to match? Stay, because today we unravel the hidden art that differentiates the greats from the legendary. In Formula One, public confessions among leading team pilots are rare, especially if these confessions imply recognizing personal weaknesses in front of a teammate. Therefore, when Charles Leclerc, one of the most pure and respected talents of the grill, admitted that Lewis Hamilton surpasses him in a key area of piloting, the paddock was silent. It was not a prepared interview or a statement to flatter your team. It was a technical and emotionally charged observation that showed the caliber of professionalism that both pilots take Ferrari this season. Leclerc, characterized by surgical aggressiveness on the track, confessed something that touched a sensitive fiber in the automobile community. His entire career had been the pilot who stopped later than his teammates. It was his seal, his advantage, his letter under his sleeve. And suddenly, in 2025, sharing a team with Hamilton, he discovered that he was no longer the bravest or the most precise in that field. He acknowledged that he had never had a teammate who won him systematically in that aspect, and that Hamilton was now one step ahead. The tone with which he said it was not defeatist. It was a mixture of admiration and fascination, because Leclerc did not talk about losing in a sector. He spoke of discovering a new level, of being a first-person witness of what it means to pilot with a mastery that transcends what he learned. These types of statements are very rare in Formula One modern, where egos and communicational strategies often prevent emotional transparency between pilots. But in this case, what Leclerc said more than respect. It is a tacit validation that Hamilton, despite his age and years outside the absolute prominence, continues to operate in a separate category. Leclerc does not need to justify its credentials. It is fast, technical, brain, and emotionally strong. But what this confession shows is that respect for Hamilton is not a political gesture within the team, but a technical recognition of reality. One that is probably influencing Ferrari's internal dynamics, and that, without a doubt, has lit a new competitive spark in the heart of Monegasque. In addition, this confession comes in a very special context. The 2025 season marks the beginning of a new era for Ferrari, a team that has opted to combine youth with experience, pure speed with strategic veteran. In this scenario, the relationship between Leclerc and Hamilton can make the difference between a divided team and a solid contender to the title. Because when a pilot like Leclerc publicly recognizes his disadvantage, he does not only to express admiration, but also to learn, to grow, and to demonstrate that he still has a margin of improvement. That in itself is a declaration of war. A silent, internal, but powerful war. The braking is one of the most complex disciplines and less understood by those who see Formula One from outside. At first glance it may seem simple. The pilot steps on the brake before a curve and then accelerates when leaving. But in reality, that moment in which pressure is applied on the brake pedal is one of the points where the gross talent and technical precision of an elite pilot is most defined. It is the space where time is compressed, where the margin of error is reduced to centimeters, where the physics of the car comes into play with an intensity that few manage to dominate. And it is precisely where Lewis Hamilton has built part of his legend. Frenting late does not mean being reckless, as some believe, nor is it just a matter of courage. It means knowing every millimeter of the track, anticipating the conditions of the asphalt, calculating the fuel load, understanding the degradation of the tires, and above all, having the sensitivity to take the car to the limit without exceeding it. It is to control a brutal deceleration of more than 5 g of force, manage that weight transfer towards the front axle without compromising balance, and still prepare the perfect entrance so that the speed in the apex is not lost. In the case of Hamilton, his braking style has been studied by engineers, rivals, and experts for years. But what has happened in 2025 with Ferrari and his partner Leclerc has put that capacity in a new light. In Montreal, for example, telemetry showed that it could stop 3 or even 4 meters later than Leclerc, in curves where stability and posterior traction are fundamental. That, in terms of performance, does not seem much. But in Formula One, those meters are directly translated into hundredths of a second, and those hundredths can decide grid positions, strategic undercuts, and ultimately races. The most striking thing is not just that Hamilton free later. It's how he does. Its brake modulation, the transition of maximum pressure to progressive release, is extraordinarily soft. There are no aggressive peaks or visible corrections in the direction. It is as if each action was synchronized with the movement of the car in an organic way. In fact, the data reveal that it uses up to 11% less variation in the management entry compared to Leclerc. This means that it needs less corrections, maintains a cleaner trace, and manages to better manage the stability of the car, even in high-speed braking. And that, beyond the show, means efficiency. It means less tire wear, better energy conservation, and less mechanical fatigue for chassis components. Another key point is the temperature of the tires. Consistent and efficiently stop maintaining the rubber in an optimal operating range. During training in Canada, Hamilton managed to maintain the surface temperature inside a band of just 3 degrees along the entire return. This not only improves grip, but reduces the phenomenon of graining, extends the useful life of the tire, and improves traction and curve outputs. In an era where the management of the roofs is as critical as pure speed, this consistency makes it a relentless weapon. It is not that Leclerc cannot stop late. It's about Hamilton doing it with more control, more finesse, more understanding of the car and track. And that, in a sport where the differences are millimeter, separates the excellent from the unbeatable. The technique can be measured. It can be compared braking, curve per curve, with telemetry data and pressure or accelerator pressure graphics. But what cannot be plotted, at least not at all, is trust. And that is the point that makes Hamilton a phenomenon that transcends the technical. Because its ability to adapt, even before new cars, different regulations, or variable conditions, is based on a confidence that is not born from pride, but from decades of experience at the highest level. And that is where the gap between him and Charles Leclerc becomes more noticeable. Leclerc, on the other hand, still seeks to feel comfortable. He has complained about the balance, the sensitivity with the middle compounds, of the lack of traction with the soft ones. Not because it is weak, but because it is still in a reunion process with the car, something that Hamilton paradoxically already seems to have overcome. And this speaks of another subtle but critical difference. Hamilton, even when the car is not completely to its liking, it is able to perform at the elite level. Its adaptation threshold is shorter, and its tolerance range against an imperfect car is wider. Experience also plays a fundamental role. Hamilton has gone through regulations that Leclerc has only read in books or seen in videos. He has piloted in times of refueling, of Bridgestone tires, of cars with double diffuser, with and without days, with and without porpoising. That tactical memory, that diversity of tools learned in extreme pressure situations, allow it to improvise better and faster. He knows when to take risks and when to wait. He knows when to change the approach in the middle of a lap if the wind in curve 3 changed for just a few kilometers per hour. But beyond the technical or the tactical, what begins to become evident is that Hamilton has not reached Ferrari to be a second leader or to close his career with dignity. It has come to win. And he is demonstrating not only with words but with facts. On 2 weekends he has achieved what many did not expect. He has questioned the internal leadership of Leclerc and has made it clear that despite the change of team, he is still one of the most complete, adaptable, and mentally strong pilots of the entire grille. What is happening within Ferrari in this 2025 season has deep implications that go far beyond the individual performance of its pilots. Leclerc's recognition towards Hamilton's ability is not just an anecdotal detail or a technical curiosity. It is the starting point to understand how the internal balance of one of the most emblematic teams in the history of Formula One is changing. Because in a sport where every thousandth, the psychological and hierarchical dynamics among colleagues can completely alter the trajectory of a team throughout a season. Ferrari has opted for an alignment of pilots with complementary but highly competitive profiles. On the one hand, Leclerc, young, aggressive, molded within the modern DNA of the Scuderia. On the other, Hamilton, veteran, meticulous, bearer of an almost encyclopedic experience and a refined career instinct over more than a decade of successes. The theory indicated that this combination should generate synergy. But the practice has shown something more complex. It has aroused a silent rivalry that could opt for the fate of the championship. What began as a strategic integration has evolved towards a subtle struggle for leadership within the team. And that struggle is happening on telemetrias, in classification times, in strategic career decisions, but above all, in the perception of engineers, mechanics, and managers. When Leclerc admits that Hamilton is ahead in an area as critical as the braking, he leaves the door open to the team starting to listen more to the feedback of the British, to refine the car more according to his sensations, and to give him priority in key moments of the technical development of the SF25. But this new structure also implies risks. Leclerc is not a second pilot. It has character, speed, talent, and championship hunger. If you begin to feel displaced or secondary, an internal conflict that fractures the harmony of the team could be generated. In a season like the current one, where McLaren leads with solidity and Red Bull still has Verstappen with the ability to trace, Ferrari cannot afford errors or internal struggles. Each point counts. Each strategy must be polished. And if there are fissures inside the garage, those points can quickly evaporate. So the question is no longer only if Ferrari has the car to fight for the title. The question is, can Ferrari manage with intelligence a situation that could define not only this championship, but its reputation as a team in this new era of shared leadership? We have crumbled one of the most honest and revealing statements of this season. That Charles Leclerc, with all his talent and status within Ferrari, openly recognizes that Lewis Hamilton surpasses him in an area as critical as the braking, opens a window to the technical, emotional, and strategic reality that the Italian team is experiencing in this 2025. We are not talking only about a chronometers duel. We are talking about an internal fight for leadership, a redefinition process in the Maranello garage, a silent battle between two piloting styles, two work philosophies.